Hello everybody and welcome back to Nerdy Miniatures, and in today's video we will be painting our Kurnoth Hunters from our Sylvaneth Spearhead, and just like our other figures we will be painting them in our cherry blossom theme. In this video we'll be painting 3 different hunters, each step will be indicated by the timestamps, so without further ado let's get into the video. So to start, I sprayed all 3 figures using grey sear spray paint. I did 2 coats to make sure that each figure was properly covered. Following this, I then painted all 3 in the colour Dryad Bark, taking the time to make sure they were all properly covered. Just like with Durthu, I dry brushed the figures using the colour Rakarth Flesh, ended up going a little bit too heavy, as at the end of the last figure I snapped off his foot accidentally, but it was nothing that a little bit of super glue couldn't fix. After letting the repair dry, I went in with the colour Elysian Green and dry brushed it across the figures, making sure they were all coated. Each figure had a different amount of green, making each one slightly different than the others. Now that that was dry, it was time to start adding the cherry blossom pink. Using the shade Doomfire Magenta, I swept a thin layer over the vines, branches and leaves, making sure each one had at least a touch of that cherry blossom pink that I wanted. Now that was done, it was time to do my favourite step, painting the vibrant green highlights onto the figure. To do this, I used the colour Moot Green and filled in the eyes, cracks and spirals to really show the magic coming from within the figure. Now it was time to move on to his weapon. For this, I painted the handle of the weapon using Rakarth Flesh. I did 2 coats to make sure it was properly covered. Whilst that dried down, I moved on to the blade and the handle. For this, I used Blue Horror to create the perfect ghostly colour for the base of this weapon, giving the whole blade a very pale blue shade. I would go in after adding a deeper blue, but before I could do that, I had to finish off the handle. To create a wood grain effect, I used the colour Skeleton Horde and washed a thin layer of the colour over the entire handle. Now it was time to dry brush the blue onto the weapons. I used different amounts of product on each weapon to create a deeper layer of saturation and for each one to be unique. That was it for the figures, but now it was time to do the bases. To start, I painted all 3 bases using Stirland Mud before moving on to the pollen. Using my favourite technique, I used tweezers, pollen and UV resin to secure the pollen onto the figures, having fun to make sure each one looked cool and different. For the actual bases, I used different things. I mixed pollen, gravel and grasses, as well as plants to finish off the figures. That is it. That is our Kurnoth Hunters all finished and ready for battle. We're almost at the end of our Spearhead now. We only have our Spite Revenants to paint, and those will be out on Wednesday next week. In the description below, you will find 2 links. The first to Mr. Nerd's channel, so if you enjoy MMOs and action RPGs, then please feel free to look at that. If you enjoy fantasy lore, you might want to take a look at my channel, where I cover things like Tolkien, Game of Thrones, Warhammer, and The Witcher. Anyway, that'll be it from us today. Hope you guys have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are in the world. As always, peace out.